Hello and welcome back. My name is Andrew Claudio. It's been a long time coming, and it's going to be hopefully not a long time before you hear us again. But I am joined.
Wait, Andrew, are you trying to say that we're going to be coming a lot again? Is that what we're doing?
We got 19 seconds into a reboot of this show, and now it's off. Not even off the rails, but it's
back on the rails. Those are where the rails belong.
Bernard Ozarowski, aka Oz, is joining me as he did for 25 episodes of the show Final Review. And from the brilliant minds in the world of Final Review is our new show called Final Draft. More on that in just a second. I first am obliged to say this at the top. Oz, I miss you. I miss talking about movies with you. My good friend, we've gone through some life changes since the last episode that we recorded talking about movies, for the very much better, I should say. And it's good that we're finally able to do this. How are you, my friend? And how much would you like to share with the listening public about what's new in your life?
Andrew, I am great. I missed us. But you know what, guys? I don't do law anymore, which means everything is sunshine and flowers and kittens and unicorns. It's just great. I now am the president of a drone light show company. So if you'd like a giant drone light show, by all means, hit me up and we will figure something out. They just cost a lot of money. But I would look, it's just so cool. I'm so much happier. I'm delighted to be out of law, like most lawyers who leave law. So I'm also excited to finally have made time to do this again with you, Andrew. I'm overjoyed, and I think our new format is going to be a hell of a lot of fun.
I agree, and we should say, for those of you listening on the podcast feed on iTunes or on Spotify, wherever you're listening to this podcast, one of the big changes as we get some housekeeping out the way at the top is that this show is also available on YouTube. So search for Final Draft on YouTube. You'll find our beautiful faces as well as a new logo and the video version of this podcast. Now, as far as the format changed, I loved Final Review, and I'm not sure like how much we should say. There's not much to hide of why Final Review is not continuing.
Guys, it took so much fucking work.
That's the reason. Yeah, I mean, every time I would go to sit down to write my rundown, I would get so much like, oh no, I have to come up with basically 60 movies that I either have seen or I'm going to refamiliarize myself with. And as much as I loved doing that show and consider it an accomplishment and like low-key going to grad school, it did take a ton of work. And we have settled on a new format that should be self-explanatory from the title that's still going to allow us to talk about movies in depth, which is the key core value of the show, I feel, and value of what we have. And so without further ado, Final Draft. We have 3 different kinds of drafts, movie drafts that we're going to do on this podcast. The first type is going to be called Mount Rushmore, should be self-explanatory. This will be when we'll have a guest on to talk about a topic where we each draft 4 movies each in snake order. So 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. The second type is fantasy football, where we'll fill out 6 or 7 man rosters that are specific. So it may be like what year the movie came out in, or the decade that the movie came out in, whether it's nominated for an Oscar, whether it made a certain amount of money at the box office. Maybe we'll follow the same Final Review criteria of Rotten Tomatoes or not. Who knows? But that'll be fantasy football. And then what we're going to do today is called Pick Up Hoops, where it's just going to be 5 versus 5. 2 guys drafting 5-man rosters. It's not with specific positions. We're just picking up our best 5. And we thought it'd be appropriate for the first show back to do best comeback movies. I should say this idea came from the brilliant mind of Bernard Ozarowski. So I do got to give him credit. And I am very excited to also hand over the first pick to him in just a second. So before we get started, Oz, what criteria do you have for best comeback movies? Did you go narrative? Are you talking about the best comeback, the meta-ness of it, whether the actor or director needed a comeback, and that's what you chose. How did you make your cheat sheet for this episode?
So I think that there's a sort of metatextual element to everything about filmmaking. No movie exists in just a vacuum of the narrative that you see from the script. Everything is your experience of an actor, your experience of a director, your experience of a genre. So I viewed it as a much more holistic selective process. So it's not going to be just, I don't know, eight versions of Seabiscuit on my list here today.
That's funny enough. Seabiscuit, not on my list.
Neither mine.
So there you go. I made two lists of, I think, both what we're talking about, the actual narrative of the comeback story, and then the meta text of what this meant for this person's career. And then there's like a middle ground of where some movies made both lists, and I'm very curious how this is going to fare out today in our first ever draft. I should mention the podcast Twitter account, it's now Final Draft Pod, will send out the results, and then those of you that get to follow us on Twitter, as long as Twitter still exists.
I do believe it's called X now.
His mama named him Twitter. I'm calling him Twitter. Okay?
Stop dead naming Twitter, Andrew.
No. It does not deserve that type of respect or honor, okay, or reverence.
I even called it Twitter as I read
exactly. No, this is very much the barbershop scene from Coming to America. Okay. Anyway, we will put out the results on Twitter, and you can vote and decide on who the winner is each time we release a new episode. Okay, Oz, with the first ever pick in Final Draft history, as we transit, look at this. We have like a whole.
Wow, this looks great.
On the screen. Look at this. Okay, Oz, the first pick is.
So I thought a lot. I didn't know I was picking first, and I'm glad that I am, because I have a clear, I think it's just the obvious choice here, assuming you look beyond the narrative in the film itself. My choice is The Godfather. And the reason that my choice is The Godfather, it's two reasons. First, that was really eloquent. The reason I'm picking The Godfather is twofold. The first is that the gangster genre had died off all through the late 50s into the 60s. It was essentially dead. They didn't make any money. They weren't successful. And along comes The Godfather in 1972. Best Picture, highest grossing movie of the year. One of the greatest movies of all time. I do believe the highest scoring movie in Final Review.
Yes.
History.
Very much so.
So it was, basically the greatest movie ever made. And it aged perfectly. It's just wonderful in every way. It resurrected an entire genre, such that we are still now getting our fill of gangster movies every single year, which had evaporated through the 60s. More than that, it's about Marlon Brando. It is the defining performance of perhaps the greatest American actor, who had been such poison at the box office, and through his own lifestyle picadillos and eccentricities, we'll say, had made him so difficult that, I think there's a famous story that the Paramount studio heads had said that he's actively detrimental. They'd rather have a schlub off the street than have Marlon Brando in this role. And instead he created essentially the most iconic performance in maybe the history of cinema. So I think The Godfather is an easy first choice, because it is a genre-defining film that resurrected an entire genre that had been lost. It is the defining comeback story of any actor in the history of Hollywood, from a nadir to a resurrection of their career. And obviously he went on to do a number of very, very well-compensated cameo-type roles after. I'm going with The Godfather. Easy top choice.
Did you watch that show on Paramount? The Offer?
So bad.
Oh, so it's bad. Okay.
It's very bad. Yeah.
It's very bad. I didn't watch it. I think because of this, I think you started watching it and said it's so bad.
Yeah, it's not what you want.
I did see that, like, as I was doing the research for The Godfather, when we were doing that episode, that, like, what it meant for the gangster genre. And then in researching for this, it came up again for the Brando of it all. I figured this would be the first pick, which is why I'm glad you got the first pick.
Thank you, buddy.
And yeah, you're welcome. It also allows me to go to my first pick, which I wanted all along. Now, there's one movie we did on Final Review called The Matrix, which helped recontextualize an actor's career. Then, after some failed experiments in the 2000s, he then reawakened in 2014 with a movie called John Wick. And now that we're 4 movies later into what is one of the best quadrilogies that I've ever seen and that I love so much, this is for narrative because they killed his dog and then he fucked shit up and became one of the best action movie heroes of all time. And then also what this did for Keanu Reeves' career. I will take John Wick with my first pick.
So what if I think that you're underrating Keanu Reeves' career? Right.
Really?
Here? What if I think you're being a little unfair to our guy?
What am I missing out on?
There's some decent stuff in the post-Matrix period, like A Scanner Darkly is in there. That's pretty good. The Day the Earth Stood Still isn't good, but I think it made a lot of money. I mean, there's some okay stuff in there. He did a little directing. A lot of people, I don't quite understand why, but a lot of people like Constantine. That's apparently a thing that young people on the internet like now. I don't know. I don't think he certainly wasn't as down and out as Brando.
I'm not saying that he is on the same scale as down and out as Brando. I'm saying that for me, you have the Matrix trilogy, and then all those movies you just mentioned don't matter to me the same way that John Wick matters to me. And the way we talk about Keanu, like he's, my goodness, he's like the step below, if not on the same level as Tom Cruise when it comes to action movie stars. So
come on.
Oz is giving me the face.
Oh my God. Look, I love Keanu, but Keanu is not on Tom Cruise's fucking level. He's not a Harrison Ford's level. He's not on Bruce Willis's level. I think he is on Bruce Willis. I think he's actually surpassed at this point. That's how much stake I put in the John Wick franchise. I would where's his Pulp Fiction?
I'm talking action movie stars.
There's action in Pulp Fiction.
Okay, we're talking. That's not. You know what I'm talking about, though. I'm comparing Die Hard to John Wick. I'm not saying
Die Hard's better than John Wick.
I agree. I would have Die Hard as the first pick in the 8. Then the next 4,
John Wick 4 is better than Live Free or Die Hard. So,
the next 4 are all going to be John Wick movies.
So I think the Continental might be kind of like A Good Day to Die Hard. So
maybe I put Keanu in a different tier now because of the John Wick franchise. Okay. The Matrix is about the experience of the overall narrative. He's fine in it, but man, what John Wick has done for how I think about this guy and his abilities and his career. Again, to be clear, Tom Cruise is on a different tier. What he did, I mean, take not the Day After Tomorrow, the Live, Die, Repeat movie, The Edge of Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow.
Well, he is also in. No. That's what's the disaster movie he did with Spielberg? The War of the Worlds.
Yes, that's Tom. Yep, Tom.
Okay,
Tom is in both of those. Yes.
I said The Day After Tomorrow. I was mixing up disaster movies,
yes,
is my point.
War of the Worlds, yes.
The point being is like Cruise is off the charts, but for what we've had the last couple of years, like last calendar year, do you prefer Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning Part 1 or John Wick 4?
John Wick 4, it's not close.
But I mean, the defense rests. I know you don't practice law anymore, but like that's the fourth movie in that franchise. I think they went out on such a bang, and it's what I think the character and what that franchise has done for his career.
There's no chance in hell that franchise is over. None.
So spoilers.
Spoilers. He's not dead. You didn't see a body?
We saw a grave.
Yeah, there's lots of movies where you see a grave and the person's not dead. That happens in like 3 different Marvel movies.
I'm down if he's still alive.
He's alive. There's a stinger.
Okay.
The movie has a fucking stinger. There's a prequel that starts tomorrow. We're recording on the 21st. The Continental comes out tomorrow. There's a new movie that's set after John Wick 4 that comes out in fucking August with Ana de Armas.
Is Keanu cast in it?
It's not announced yet. Actually, I think IMDb says Keanu is in it.
Oh, so never mind. All right, whatever. Then there's going to be more Keanu, and I'm going to love it because John Wick is that good. So my first pick is John Wick.
That's a reasonable choice. But I think that I just can't believe that it was not a first round pick. The most obvious answer, the easiest answer, the layup answer. But I shouldn't say the layup answer because I'm not going with Hoosiers. It's Rocky. Rocky is the quintessential underdog story. It's the quintessential overcome the odds. It's the quintessential comeback. It is. It's a great movie. It's beloved. The 1976 Best Picture winning classic that has spawned a lot of other movies of vastly mixed quality. Frankly, I'm open to the argument that Creed is actually a better movie.
That's why Rocky wasn't my first pick.
But Creed only works so well because it trades on all of the emotional texture that the audience has with the Balboa character as established in Rocky and repeatedly tried to kick into the dirt after that in the sequels over time. But Rocky, the character of Rocky Balboa, the film Rocky, it is really the perfect example of a comeback story.
Did you see Creed 3?
Yeah, of course.
I hate how much I love that movie and how quickly after that movie news came out about the antagonist in the movie.
What if? Bear with me here. What if?
Oh, here we go.
Jonathan Majors has actually just given the same performance in every single movie he's ever done. And everyone is like, hey, that's awesome. The first 2 or 3 times you see it. And then when you're a crazy person like me, who's seen him do the same thing 9 times, you're like, no, that's actually just who that guy is. And look, allegations and all that, but sure seems like that's the guy he is in real life too.
No comment, first of all. And then I thought it was really good in Creed 3. I think
I watched Magazine Dreams 3 weeks before I saw Creed 3, and it's the same performance.
That's the thing. I didn't see Magazine Dreams. I didn't see the show he did on HBO. It was that's
actually the only one where he's a little bit different, and I kind of like that show. It's good. You're talking about Lovecraft Country, right?
Yeah. I didn't see that. I've seen Last Black Man in San Francisco.
Did you see Kang? Because Kang is the same as what is it? Diamond Damien or whatever the hell his name is.
When you say Kang, are you talking about the Ant-Man movie or a different Kang?
I'm talking about the 600 Kangs at the end of the Ant-Man movie. So that are still hypothetically coming back for the Avengers movie. Who knows?
The MCU may come up in just a second as for a comeback movie. It may need another movie for comeback movies after the state of that franchise at the moment. Yes, I did see all the different Jonathan Majors and all the different Kangs that showed up, which doesn't detract for how much I like him in Creed 3. It may detract how much I'm looking forward to anything in that franchise anymore. But yeah, I don't disagree with the Rocky pick. I just felt I needed John Wick more, which you probably would have ended up getting to me here, although you can surprise me sometimes with your second pick. But for my second pick in this draft, I'm going to take one of my favorite sports movies. And it may not seem like a sports movie, but it's actually a business movie disguised as a sports movie. So Oz is a diehard Yankee fan. And in 2001, the Yankees eliminated the Oakland Athletics in the first round of the playoffs. I'm going rogue, guys. And not only did they win that series against the Athletics, but then they stole that team's first baseman in the offseason named Jason Giambi. And the powers that be out in Oakland decided.
But his name was Chris Pratt. Is that where we're going?
Not yet. Yeah, they decided, the powers that be decided that the way they were going to replace the MVP candidate, the on-base machine known as Jason Giambi, was not by trying to replace him with replace the home runs or the walks or the RBIs. They're going to try and do it by moneyballing it and going and getting Scott Hatteberg. And if you believe the narrative of the movie, they had no pitching on that team. All the old fuddy-duddy scouts had done nothing to build out the core that was so successful on that team. But featuring a very fun and very charismatic Brad Pitt performance. And at the time, a bit of a revelation from Jonah Hill I'm going Moneyball with my second pick. And Oz has a comment.
I have to say that just like that movie, you ignored the MVP shortstop, the MVP caliber
Tejada.
shortstop of that team, who was basically on the Marvel wellness plan the entire time he was doing all of that. But again, more poor erasure for Miguel Tejada.
Listen, I mentioned that they had pitching on that team. They had the league's MVP the following season and the Cy Young the following season. Had nothing to do with Scott Hatteberg or that 20-game winning
streak. That movie acts like they're the fucking Bad News Bears, and they have 3 Cy Young contenders, guys who all had there were moments in each of those 3 guys' careers when you were like Barry Zito, Hall of Famer, Mark Mulder, Hall of Famer, Tim Hudson's polling 15% every year. He's going to last the full time on the ballot. They had really, really good pitching. They had a good closer. They had a whole good bullpen, and Miguel Tejada was a fucking MVP contender. And that movie is like, oh no, it's like the 2023 fucking Oakland A's out here. It's bullshit. And it missed the point of Moneyball itself. It missed the economic efficiency element of it to make it all this cute little foofy doofy underdog story. Fuck that movie.
And it's my second pick because I love the Brad Pitt performance and I love that book. As much as I push back on the many tank enthusiasts out there that think there's only one true way to do a certain thing, I still it's one of my feel good movies. I think it's one of the best movies of the 21st century. One of the best baseball movies of the 21st century. Now that not a ton to choose from, but I'll defend it.
What it is. Sugar is probably the best one.
I'd have to really sit down and think that all of mine go back to the 80s. There's a legit 4-year stretch where it's like Field of Dreams, Major League, Bull Durham. I got to really think about it. Okay, Oz, your third pick in this draft is what?
My third pick is Iron Man. And it is Iron Man because of Robert Downey Jr. I'm obviously compelled by the off-screen narratives, but the meta casting of the drunk as the drunk is pretty perfect. And frankly, it's that casting choice and the fact that Downey completed the comeback story perfectly launched the most successful franchise in the history of Hollywood. And I'm talking about the entire MCU franchise because every bit of it rests on the back of Robert Downey Jr. And if we've learned anything from Phase 4, which I largely quite like, Ant-Man aside, most of it's good. I like the TV shows, but man, no one cares anymore now that Downey's not part of the picture. And he's the secret sauce of what made it all work. That performance is one of the most iconic superhero action leading man performances there is. It's pretty much the perfect mixture of character, of performance, of talent, and of meta narrative. Look, that is the single thing that launched the most successful thing in the history of this industry.
Can I ask your deeper thoughts about the state of the MCU? Because I don't know, sometimes I feel like I can get to hyperbole quicker than is necessary, but I'm just going by how I personally feel. I also have moments in Phase 4, the post-Endgame world, that I like. And how much I love Spider-Man No Way Home. And we share an affection for Shang-Chi. And there's a show here and a show there where I enjoy my time. I loved Loki. I loved WandaVision. And I have fun experiencing these shows in a vacuum. It did become taxing at times to try and keep up with everything. And now they're coming off of just what I felt like it was a huge misstep with Secret Invasion.
Oh, yeah, Secret Invasion was very bad.
Especially that last episode.
Whenever it wasn't Olivia Colman, that show was really, really bad.
It's one of the issues I had early on with the MCU is call the Avengers. And then Sam even addresses this, we shouldn't have to call the Avengers for everything. So, well, what are they for? So they're defending. This is exactly the situation you should be calling them.
Especially, it's all the C-list Avengers who are left. They're not even in these things.
Yeah. So how would you characterize the state of the franchise? Because it is, like you said, the most successful thing the industry's seen, but is life support too strong a word?
No, it's not on life support. Come on. Obviously,
Okay, so
obviously
they've
overextended. They brutally overextended. They spread themselves too thin. They made too much content. Everything on the goddamn green screens because they just like won't shoot on location anymore. Like aesthetically, Ant-Man Quantumania is hideous. Yeah. It is like unwatchably ugly. It's like not one person in that movie was in even the same room at the same time. Like I know that they were, technically on the same sound stages. It's just so vile. It's like all rear projection all the time. It's almost like an AI generated type of movie. Largely though, I actually like the TV shows. I do not like Secret Invasion and I do not like Falcon and Winter Soldier, but all the ones in between those I like. And WandaVision, which I guess was first. I like all of them. I think they're all good, not great. I'd like to spend more time with those characters. I even like She-Hulk. I think the movies are all fine. The problem is they're just lower stakes. I think Shang-Chi is top tier Marvel. I know you have Spider-Man as top tier Marvel. I kind of like Eternals. It's okay. Black Widow kind of leaves me soft, but it's fine. Doctor Strange is like the most actually a comic book story of all of the MCU movies. I don't really understand the hate for Love and Thunder. It's fine. I've shed a tear or two during Wakanda Forever. I just don't mind these movies. And maybe it's because I don't know. Maybe I'm just old and don't give a fuck anymore. But it sure seems to me that they're all perfectly fine. They're a decent way to spend 2 hours, except for Quantumania.
I think I don't have a pushback to what you're saying. I think the only difference for me personally, and it's not a fair thing because expectations shouldn't matter with the quality of a movie. Like I agree with you. Like fine would be the word that I'd use. Like fine to good. Post Endgame, it's really tough to ratchet yourself back up for an experience like this because you're always comparing it to that home run that they hit, that World Series you won. These are now wild card bursts that they're.
I was about to say how someday you're going to find out as a Mets, Jets, Knicks fan what it's like to win a championship, and then afterwards you're going to feel the burnout effect the next year. And I think we're all feeling that a little bit. Look, Phase 4 is better than Phase 2. Phase 2 has Winter Soldier and Thor: The Dark World. Yeah. Like Age of Ultron has aged so poorly. It's such a sloppy mess. You could feel like the tentacles of like studio interference throughout it. It's so messy. I don't know. I'd rather watch Phase 4 than Phase 2 quite easily.
I think so I don't disagree with that notion. I think what you're hinting at with the burnout is Phase 4 is 5 movies, 6 movies.
It's Phase 4 is like longer than there's
phase
more
two,
minutes
phase
in
2. I mean, Phase 2.
Yeah. There's more content in Phase 4 than everything else in the MCU, like by a lot.
So that's the burnout is the quality of Phase 4 is probably higher than the quality of Phase 2. The commitment of Phase 2 is 6 movies over a span of 4 years. So you're able to space it out and just kind of stick your toe into the MCU every now and then. Whereas it really felt like it's 6 to 8 weeks of show movie, 6 to 8 weeks of show movie. And then, all of this has to matter. And when this suddenly became a 365-day commitment to the MCU, it's tough to then be told every single time, oh, this matters. Like this matters. That's what the MCU told us for 11 years leading up to Endgame was like, all of this is going to matter at the end of the day.
And the problem is that none of it matters anymore. I'm pretty sure it was like 5 TV shows and 4 movies ago where like a giant being climbed out of the North Pole. And we've just never mentioned that. And I know it's coming back in Captain America, but we've just ignored that for dozens of hours of content. And stuff like that kind of makes people fucking crazy. It makes you feel like you're wasting your time when they try to do these big world tie-ins. How many of the stingers are ever going to happen? I bet you we're never getting Charlize in a fucking Doctor Strange movie. We're never getting Roy Kent in a Thor movie. Like
Harry Styles.
Paid off.
I don't think we're ever seeing Harry Styles.
Never happening.
I hope
thank God we won't get Pip the Troll returning. So
I do hope we end up with Blade in the MCU because I love that casting of Mahershala as Blade.
I'm excited that Delroy Lindo is going to get to be in a giant blockbuster again.
Yeah. It's also just like to wrap up MCU talk. Like it's why I thought Quantumania was such a miss, because it felt like any fatigue I felt through that phase was, Kang's coming. They, whatever you're feeling right now, they have their next Thanos, their next big bad that we're looking forward to in Kang, and he loses to Ant-Man. And then their reasoning for that is like, well, there's thousands of them. It's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Ant-Man could beat them. It's just so all of these superheroes are going to beat an Ant-Man. Like that's just, are going to beat a Kang, and that's going to be fine. And it's uninteresting as a narrative to me, rather than it's simple, but there's one big bad person. And, it's why Thanos, I think, is one of the top tier villains. And then Kang it did not meet the expectations, at least I had when I went and watched that movie.
I think you're right on. I actually think that's the Kang of it all is a huge problem, and not just because Quantumania is bad and it should have ended with Kang killing Scott Lang when everyone else escapes through the portal at the end.
Real quick, when that end scene was happening, I was like, oh, the movie elevated to a different level. It's like they're gonna kill Ant-Man
for like 40 seconds, and then it was all fake out. And
then so Kang loses. You can't preach that this is the next big bad that you're naming an Avengers movie after, and he's losing to Ant-Man.
Also, look, I'm sorry. I'm the level of nerd that I'd heard of Echo before Echo was in Hawkeye. I've heard of some of these Eternals before. I don't give a shit about Kang. Am I really supposed to care about this character? It's just not. Maybe it's because I don't particularly love the Cosmos stuff, and time travel always sucks. It's just not my favorite. But Doctor Doom right there, way more interesting. Give me Doctor Doom. Give me the stupidity of however you deal with Galactus fighting against humans. They'll probably end up looking like MODOK and be terrible. But I don't know. It's not like a sexy, exciting villain in the way Thanos is. The one I am excited for is Deadpool 3. Because, oh my God, they filmed in the real world. There's things around them that aren't made by computers. And boy, how wonderful is that?
There's a book coming out in about a month. Joanna Robertson of The Ringer and one of her co-hosts co-wrote it about the MCU and what they accomplished over the last decade. I pre-ordered it. I'm curious if by the time it gets to me, will I still care about this franchise? Because you're hinting at one of the two things that I'm still looking forward to, and there's X-Men coming, and then there's a Fantastic Four coming. So the Deadpool movie will be the first X-Men technically MCU movie, but they're going to bring back Logan for it.
Maybe not. Depends how you define what Kamala Khan is.
Well, so she's the first actual mutant. I agree with that. They actually did have an X-Men in a mutant in, but as far as an X-Men movie, they're literally having Wolverine in a movie in a year or so. So after that, you then have to nail the casting of the X-Men, the casting of the Fantastic Four. There is that new introduction of these Fox characters that I can get behind. In my opinion, and this is just how I feel, maybe it could be wrong, I think they botched the Kang thing. As far as storyline is concerned, I'm just not interested in this anymore. And if you're telling me that,
curious who is. I'm curious what person out there is Kang. That's my guy.
Well, because it's not even leading up to the Secret Wars. So if the Secret Wars is just gonna be 900 versions of heroes fighting against each other, you want to talk about a mess on screen? It's the same thing as putting all of your toys, which I'm sure this is kind of what you did as a kid, but all your action figures in a bucket and just shaking them around and fighting each other. I don't know. I enjoy this franchise a ton. I liked it when it didn't require, I wasn't told as much mattered, and it didn't require as much homework, it feels. So, okay. That was a nice diatribe on the MCU. I'm gonna go with a much better movie. So I think there's only one movie objectively that is better than what I'm picking at the moment. I'm going with Pulp Fiction. For what it did for John Travolta's career specifically.
It was on my list. It might have been next.
So is it weird if I'm taking Pulp Fiction because without it we probably don't get Face Off?
I had to tell you, when I was thinking about taking Pulp Fiction, I was like, in my brain, I actually thought that my justification is I like those shitty 90s Travolta action movies so much, and they only exist because of Face Off.
Yep.
I'm totally with you.
I don't think we get Face Off without Pulp Fiction. And then,
We don't, of course not.
So as a result, I'm taking Pulp Fiction because what it made for John Travolta's career is it gave us Face Off. So that's, I mean, I don't think I need to sing the virtues of Pulp Fiction even more. We did an entire final review of it. It's in our top 4 for Tarantino movies. But yeah, I will take Pulp Fiction with my 3rd pick. Your number 4 pick.
My number 4 pick is it's very much based on the life of a personal favorite of mine and a final review. I would present to you that between the years of 1999 and 2006, this person may have had the single most disappointing output of films that anyone with the career beginning that he had has ever put to screen. And the man went from the glory of Good Will Hunting, the loved performances in the Kevin Smith movies, scenery chewing and scenery stealing glory in Shakespeare in Love. Armageddon is great shit, and if you disagree, you're just fucking wrong. After that, it's like 200 Cigarettes and Reindeer Games and Bounce and Pearl Harbor. Jesus Christ, that movie sucks. Sum of All Fears, Daredevil, Geely, Surviving Christmas, Jersey Girl. All of this stuff is dog shit. And Ben Affleck's comeback was by getting behind the camera. And our guy Ben directed a hell of a film called Gone Baby Gone, which to my eye, though I like all of his films very much except for Live by Night, which I don't know what happened there. Love all of his films as a director. Gone Baby Gone is his best movie as a director. It's his calmest, most measured. It's basically the best Clint Eastwood movie that Clint Eastwood didn't direct. It is a fantastic, thought out crime drama. I don't want to get too much into the weeds because too many people haven't seen it. It's a beautifully executed movie. Let's leave Casey's issues aside. It's a great Casey Affleck performance, one of many great Casey Affleck performances, because Casey Affleck is secretly a better actor than Ben. But I adore Ben. If there's like one actor in Hollywood that I would want to go like have a beer with and just hear about his life, it'd be Ben Affleck. I'm all in on the Ben train. Gone Baby Gone, unbelievable comeback as a director. He, with Air this year, has reestablished himself as a leading director of like actual adult movies for adults. And I don't mean that in the dirty way, that he just makes movies for educated humans. And since it's either IP or like total art house shit, some nice like middle of the road uplifting stories. God, we fucking need those. I love you, Ben Affleck. Congratulations on being picked number 4.
It's on my list. I need to revisit this movie because the town is very high in my personal pantheon, and I think I've seen this movie once and just haven't seen it in a while. So I'm curious with that kind of take whether I revisit it and reconsider some things. Well, I don't see it potentially passing the specifically the last 20 minutes of the town when they're robbing Fenway Park and then all hell breaks loose. But yeah, this for the Ben Affleck of it all. Now, what's the second comeback movie?
Second comeback movie for Ben?
Yeah.
Air.
So Air's it's not The Last Duel?
The Last Duel is great. It's great. I love that movie.
Yeah,
he's also in that movie
nobody saw it.
He's in that movie for like 12 minutes and nobody saw it. I think that performance should have. The fact that it was nominated for a Razzie is the biggest disgrace ever. That was one of the great comedic performances of the last 10 years. That movie is fucking awesome. And he's so good in it. Such a sleazeball. I love him in it. I love how nobody in that movie gives a fuck about accents. That's the Ridley Scott year. We had like the two extremes of like, it's a Mario with the Gucci movie. And then we had the perfect, like, we're just going to talk in Southie when we're like a French feudal lord. Last Duel is awesome. Great movie. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Wonderful, wonderful stuff.
I believe that's my Letterboxd review of the last duel is Doth Thou Like Apples?
I think we see Gucci together, didn't we?
We saw Gucci together,
yeah.
And then afterwards I came on and did as good a Mario impersonation as I could for the intro of that podcast.
Full Jared Leto voice for that.
Yeah. He's like midway through that movie just goes boo or something like that. It literally sounds like Mario jumping off a mushroom. Anyway, good pick. I like Ben Affleck and I like his comebacks in his career. Speaking of comebacks, which makes sense, this is a comeback draft. There was a comeback very recently, actually, and the comeback press tour was so emotional. And usually when these things happen, you get sick of them at a certain point and you're like, we get it. You're out of the industry for a while. But Ke Huy Quan last year, every single interview and acceptance speech that he gave for Everything Everywhere All at Once, him as Short Round in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And just hearing about how typecast he was and how Hollywood had a certain stigma of what Asian actors are allowed to play and how he had to go behind the camera to the point of like production roles, not even like as a director, but like as a cameraman for certain projects, and just thought the industry wasn't there for him. And it was like seeing Crazy Rich Asians and then meeting the two dudes that I'm blank on the Daniels, Daniels directors. I just fell in love with his story and how sincere it appeared he felt about this second chance that he got, that he was just happy he was in a movie that was doing well. And for him to be honored by the industry, we're a year removed from arguably my worst personal experience watching the Oscars with the steak I had in Will Smith. And then to follow it up with a comeback story like this reminded me of what, the feels that can be felt.
I'll say we had a text thread with our significant others, with the Macris, with Yash and his right hand. And on that text thread, we all acknowledged having a few moist eyes during the Academy Award acceptance speech. I think it's a delightful pick. It was actually on my list, but let me push back a little.
Oh, push back. Okay.
And the way I'm going to push back here is say it's not a comeback. It's a one-hit wonder getting his second chance. Maybe it's a two-hit wonder. Goonies, if you want to count Goonies in there, it's fine. Like 10 Minutes in Encino Man doesn't count, and no one's ever heard of anything else he was in the time in between. And I think it's a one-hit wonder guy who came back. And I'm not sure that's quite the same thing as a true comeback, because the heights were never reached in the beginning. Cute child actor in a couple of movies who then disappears forever. You never ascended. This wasn't like a Macaulay Culkin, like pop culture figure. This wasn't like a Zac Efron when he dominated the Disney Channel specials type of star. This was a kid actor in some movies that we remember fondly because everyone sees Indiana Jones and the Goonies. They're like quintessential 80s movies. And then he was just kind of gone. Like, I think everything about the narrative is true. I'm just not sure it's so much a comeback narrative. It's maybe a bit of a injustice narrative, but I'm not so sure it fits as a comeback.
To the meta of it all, fine. I guess the narrative also doesn't fit the fact that this is a comeback movie. And like, it's a fair pushback. I think the way it was billed, as he literally came back into our lives, is the direction I'm going with this kind of pick. That he could have never done this movie and he's forever just Short Round or the kid in the Goonies. And that's all I know him as. And those movies are timeless and live on forever. It's not the peak that you're talking about. Like, it's not the Ben Affleck where he was after Good Will Hunting or any of the heights he ascended to then becoming a director and what he was with Gone Baby Gone. I get that. It's enough for me to have it. It's enough for me to put it in this list and in this qualification, because I think I mean, he's in Loki. He's in the MCU now, off the strength of Everything Everywhere All at Once.
American Born Chinese isn't bad. The Disney Plus show.
The Disney Plus show.
Mm-hmm.
So like they might have. It might have kickstarted a career that may not have happened, which maybe you're right that it's not a comeback story because there was never something to come back from. But I'd argue certain stigmas in Hollywood are something to overcome. So maybe it's more of an underdog story than a comeback story. I'm fine putting it here at this list.
I'm fine putting it here. I love him, so I'm not gonna push back too hard.
All right.
So for my final pick, I played a little poker here because this would actually have been my second choice in my heart. I really, really like James Bond.
Okay.
And the greatest James Bond movie ever made was actually the 21st James Bond movie made, or depending on if you count the TV movie or the non-official ones, we could tack a few numbers on there. Doesn't really matter. Casino Royale is the greatest Bond movie ever made. It's perfect. I was very drunk when we did our final review of that episode. So just don't go back to that one. Andrew, feel free to delete that from the internet. But look, Connery is Bond. And even if Connery is not Bond, Bond kind of stops being Bond around, Spy Who Loves Me, or if you like your Bond a little darker, that's 77. For Your Eyes Only in 81 is pretty good. The last couple mores are terrible. The Dalton movies are Living Daylights is mediocre, and License to Kill is terrible. I really like GoldenEye, but that's also because it was like my first formative Bond movie. There's a lot of ways to criticize it, and all the other Brosnan ones are bad. This is a character who, in a lot of ways, probably deserved to be on life support by 2006, and Daniel Craig brought it back to life. Daniel Craig might have brought it to heights it never even reached in the Connery era, depending on how you view the metrics and box office and everything else. It's one of the finest. Casino Royale is one of the finest action movies ever made. It's the finest Bond movie ever made, with love and respect to Skyfall, which is wonderful, and No Time to Die, which is also quite good. Look, the greatest Bond in the greatest Bond movie in a franchise that was desperately in need of reinvigoration. My final pick in our first final draft, Casino Royale.
There's no chance I would take this from you.
Well, thank you. That's why I figured I could wait on it.
You could. So my last pick is one I don't think you would expect me to take. And I didn't think you would take it because I have no idea how you feel about this movie or about this rapper, for that matter. So I'm going narrative. It's not like a comeback story or career comeback or anything like that. It's solely narrative. Can everybody from the 313 put your motherfucking hands up and follow me? Look, I'm not going to say that this is peak cinema. I'm not going to say that this is prestige. I'm not even going to necessarily say that this is good. I know that every time I have watched 8 Mile, I end up, whatever point I jump into, I'm there for the rest of the movie. And watching Eminem and his lack of ability, whatever you want to call it, ability to act.
I actually think he's okay. I was never into those like Batman rumors, but I think he could have had more of a career if he wanted it.
I think he's good at playing Eminem or B-Rabbit or whatever you want to call him, and it's amazing on the rewatch. All of like Michael Shannon is in that movie, and it's like there are actually some good actors in this movie. And look, it doesn't take away from the fact that he chokes at the beginning of that. Oh, Jesus, right. The Falcons in that movie. I keep forgetting. Like
knees weak, mom's spaghetti.
Yes. There's vomit on his sweater already. Oz.
Yes.
The last 5 rap battles are electric, and they form a portion of my high school, and especially when we discovered YouTube and that all of these rap battles are there. My hot take is that Lotto actually won his rap battle against B-Rabbit, and it should have been him and Papa Doc in the finals. But I just the last 3 minutes in particular, his final winning battle verse is outstanding. And I knew something about you. You went to Cranbrook. That's a private school. I'll go with 8 Mile as my last pick.
What's wild about that movie is that Curtis Hanson, the director, was coming off low key one of the best movies of the 90s in LA Confidential. and just a masterful character drama in Wonder Boys, and did this. Like, that is some serious clout behind it. Like, I'm not a big Kim Basinger fan as a performer. She's kind of good in this. Mekhi Phifer is very good in this movie. It's kind of surrounding him with I like Michael Shannon's in this movie for like 3 minutes. Anthony Mackie's in this movie for like 3 minutes. But there's a lot of pretty serious people who are part of this thing. It's just really, it's built in a way to allow him to succeed, which I think is very smart. Like Omar Benson Miller is a great character actor, just full of people I like in it. It's a good movie. It's a solid pick. I'm not at all surprised once you started talking that that's where you were going. I would not have selected this film. It would have been a number more picks before we got here.
Listen, I'm sure there are many other Oz picks that were available at this point. I had to. This one is a hard pick, so I had to go with it. Honorable mentions.
Wait, did you not take a sports movie?
I took Moneyball.
Oh, well, that's not really a sports movie. That's like a front office movie.
The one I went with.
That's like a fantasy sports movie.
So you want to go through honorable mentions, because there's several on my list. I thought it would be somewhat cliche to take a sports movie.
I have like 8 sports movies on my list. It's like every other sports movie I love is on my list. Miracle is on my list. Warrior is on my list. Hoosiers, just as a draft pick, even though I don't really love it, is on my list.
So what's the comeback in Miracle?
The comeback in Miracle is that
not Miracle in Warrior. In Warrior, he's a failed fighter who's a science teacher.
So it's Joel Edgerton is really the main character of that movie. And also Hardy's like a fuck up too.
Yeah. And they find each other and the family gets back together.
It's a whole comeback. Everyone is a comeback except dear old dad's drinking problem. That's still there at the end. Okay.
And then Miracle's borrowing from, well, technically, if you're going to apply the Ke Quan stipulation,
get face fucked at Madison Square Garden.
But there's no peak. There's nothing they ascended to. It's an underdog story.
They're top top NHL players. I mean, they were the best.
Are any of them NHL players? Weren't they just like college kids?
I guess they were all college kids. Yeah. No,
so that's why I'm asking about Miracle.
I guess it is all college
Is it
kids.
Also an underdog story?
Maybe this does hit it is an underdog story. I think that's fair. Actually.
See, that's why I didn't take Remember the Titans. They don't, first of all, the reality of that story is like,
that's fair.
They were elite because of their talent and were undefeated, and there was no question about them ending racism in the Virginia in the 60s. But Remember the Titans, like what they overcome is not like a comeback. They don't ascend to something. They're just like an undefeated sports team.
That's Hoosiers too.
So Hoosiers is just like a snooze fest for me. But again, it's an underdog story. I tried to somewhat honor it, which is why honestly, I guess the Ke Quan of it all.
Let me self-criticize.
Think about it. What?
Rocky's an underdog story more than a comeback story.
It's why I would have went with Creed. Creed's the one I wrote down.
But Creed's an underdog story too. He's a never was. It's actually
for Balboa.
Where I should be going is like Rocky 3.
Oh, see, I was gonna say Rocky 4.
But Rocky 4 is not. Rocky
he retires.
I mean, I guess he retires, but there's no, it just kind of, he starts as a retired champion, comes out of being a champion, and goes back to being a champion. Like there's no.
Hold on. He does not come out a retired champion. He ends the Cold War. Let's get facts straight. And then you find out in the 5th movie that he had brain damage when he ended the Cold War.
He did get CTE. So there's that, which they then sweetly retconned out a few years later.
Starting a trend of American heroes that have brain damage. Anyway, what else you got?
You know what? I got one for you. Tar, for the comeback of Todd Field, who'd been gone for like 20 years. More movies, please, Todd. That's a great film.
Birdman for Keaton. Yeah.
On my list too.
I have that on my list. As far as the movie from last year, also The Whale, which is a downer of a movie, but for what it did for Brendan Fraser. I know you don't like that movie. I'm just saying it is a comeback movie.
I'm not saying anything.
What else you got?
I like Brendan Fraser. I like Darren Aronofsky. I'm not saying anything else. Just biting my tongue very hard.
So one of the movies that showed up a lot on lists when I went looking for research for this was Cinderella Man. I gotta be honest, never seen it.
It's fine. It's a little bit of an underdog story too. he's like a guy, not like a guy.
Yeah. So here's what I don't understand. That movie that kept getting suggested. It's also a sports movie. It's also a boxing movie. So $1 Million Baby kept showing up on some of these lists. Have they not seen the ending of that movie?
It's like the opposite of a comeback story.
It's a coma movie, coma back movie.
I thought of taking a Shia LaBeouf movie here. There were actually a couple.
Which one?
There's a couple of contenders. I don't really know where you want to zoom in. You could do like early Shia LaBeouf being good again, and do like Nymphomaniac or Fury or even American Honey. You could do the sort of later like Peanut Butter Falcon and Honey Boy era. There's just so many. There's so many in the roller coaster that it's a little hard to pick one. It's also, I guess, in hindsight, a little hard to pick one now too. Yeah. But
there's not going to be another comeback movie. Good filmography.
Talented actor.
Mm-hmm.
Totally disagree. Isn't he? He's in the Coppola movie.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's in the Coppola movie with Adam Driver. I'm pretty sure.
I had no idea.
Coppola does not give a fuck about any allegations like that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that movie is full of people with like issues or people who are perhaps not really serious actors. I think it's like SNL cast members and Jon Voight. It's very weird.
Oh man. Well, coming to a theater maybe in the future.
Yeah, I'm looking now. Dustin Hoffman is in it. He's got he's got some issues to him. Talia Shire, bringing back the Rocky of our conversation. This is so weird. All right, Adam Driver, Forrest Whitaker, Nathalie Emmanuel from the Fast Movies and Thrones, Jon Voight, Lawrence Fishburne, Aubrey Plaza, Jason Schwartzman, Shia LaBeouf, Talia Shire, James Remar, Chloe Fineman. I knew there was some SNL in here. D.B. Sweeney, Dustin Hoffman, and Giancarlo Esposito. That is just the weirdest cast. That is like the Barbie of Bizarre.
Barbie of Bizarre. I can't wait to see it. Hopefully it comes. I guess Shia was cast to be the Harry role in Don't Worry, Darling. So I guess.
Oh yes, they had their little spat of like releasing each other's text messages or whatever they did. I'm glad I didn't follow that very closely.
Well, just like the point is like to the idea of like there won't be a comeback movie. Like had he not had issues with Olivia Wilde, then that would have been like a continuation of his career with no issues. So, all right. I think that's all of the honorable mentions we're going to mention. Oz, let's read off our teams. Your 5 movies are.
My first pick was The Godfather. My second pick was Rocky. My third pick was Iron Man. My fourth pick was Gone Baby Gone. And my fifth pick was Casino Royale.
My first pick is John
Thank you,
Wick.
Yash, for your vote, by the way.
My first pick is John Wick. You got the Macri vote too with Iron Man. So I already know I'm losing in that group chat. My first pick is John Wick. My second pick is Moneyball. My third pick is Pulp Fiction. My fourth pick is Everything Everywhere All at Once. And my fifth pick is 8 Mile. You decide who wins by voting on twitter.com. Just look up the username at Final Review Pod. It is also in the description of this.
I believe it's Final Draft
What I say? Yeah. That's going to happen a lot. That's going to happen a lot. Final Draft Pod. It's also in the description of this episode where you can find all of our social channels. Oz, anything hold on.
I have a request on the way we posted on the socials. It can't just be which is the team of the best comebacks. You got to give a little context and say, meta comebacks. That it's not just like narrative comebacks, because they're going to look at mine and be like, what the fuck is Casino Royale doing there, without a bit of context to the fact that it's a comeback for the character of James Bond.
So I'm hoping that anybody that heard you say that already listened to the pod and knows whether or not you won the draft or not.
Well, what I'm saying is that you're aiming for a Twitter win, not actually justified by the people who are listening to the arguments, because I am going to dominate with the listeners. You're trying to win with the Knicks Film School marks.
Listen, you have The Godfather, You have Iron Man. You have Rocky. You're going to win on Twitter.
Most of those don't look like fucking comeback movies.
But you're going to win the draft. If people, I picked those movies over 8 Mile. Like, you're going to win.
Well, that's
draft. It's literally, so a lot of people in these drafts just be like, oh, those 5 movies are better than those 5 movies. That's going to win.
I am going to win in that count.
Exactly. So,
or I'm going to get canceled for picking a Casey Affleck movie, one or the other.
Check the description of this episode, whether you're listening or watching over on our YouTube channel. You can find a link to the poll over at twitter.com or I guess x.com. And we'll read the results on the next episode to decide who the winner was. Oz, been a long time coming, but it was nice to finally talk movies with you.
I have a plug. Can I do a plug?
Yes, please plug.
Please follow Pixis Drones, Pixis on Instagram. And see what I'm up to.
Yes. Follow Oz and his new endeavor. I've seen only digitally, not in person, but I've seen some of the shows that they put on. And
are you coming on October 12th?
That's
for those of you in New York City.
It's a Tuesday.
It's a Thursday. We're flying a show for Pac-Man. I don't know when this is being published. We're flying a show for Pac-Man. 750 drones next to the Brooklyn Bridge on October 12th. It'll be good viewing from Manhattan. Just look across the water around 8 o'clock.
Yes, I'm coming because we talked about this. The Knicks are off. Yeah. So I should be able to come that night. So hopefully you all can join me when we go watch Oz's first show. As far as this first show is concerned, thank you for tuning in, everybody. It's good to be back, and we will see you next time.